Hello again. Welcome to the Spread Nesson's football and sports betting picks podcast. Nesson.com's Mike Cole, joined once again as always by Nesson.com's Ricky Doyle. Ricky, how are you?
Doing well, Mike. How you doing?
Fine. Happy New Year.
Hey, you too.
I think we're
very much in the grace period.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to do that, but in the spread world that only exists week to week, this is our first time since reconvening. So, we don't need to relitigate the same tired debates about when it is. So anyway, the playoffs are here though. That's exciting. NFL wild card weekend is upon us. I think we'll just kind of run through every game on the slate. That's what our show is this week. We're kind of doing things a little differently. I think we're just gonna. You want to give picks, leans? How do we want to describe this? I guess
sure, whatever. They're both the same, right?
I guess there's no ledger really
killing us or fading us, anyways. So
it's just
fire away.
A departure from the
thoughts.
The tiered picks, we'll get into that in a little bit. I think, is there anything? I mean, I haven't come close to tearing any ligaments this week. I haven't really gone through any major consternation. I don't know if you have any car troubles or anything that you want to get off your chest before we get into actual football stuff.
No, well, the car trouble that you do mention it. So you know how I have my Jeep. The top. Let's just say it's like. There's like a crack in between, like it doesn't go down all the way.
Yeah.
So there's like, and I think I've mentioned this before on here, where if it rains a certain direction, like sometimes I get a little water in there. The problem running into now in this region, very cold, very windy.
Yeah.
That's a problem on the highway right now because I feel like I'm about to just like a hot air balloon. Like I'm just going to be taken away into the sky one of these days when I'm driving into work.
How old are you?
What am I, 35?
You're 35. Yeah. Good job. Not a whole lot of, well.
But go on.
Not a lot. I don't mean to say you don't have a lot going on, but it's not like you're beholden.
I think you're underselling that at this point.
Yeah, I didn't want to be mean. I'm just saying you don't have a mortgage as far as I understand.
No.
You don't have a child as far as I know. You've got some money to play around with. Any thought to buying a new car at some point?
I think you're overstating that.
I'm getting a phone call here. Any thought to getting a new car?
Oh, it's very much on the radar.
I mean, it feels like it's a time.
Yeah.
You've had this Jeep for a while. It seems like it's more hassle than it is harm.
I like to travel though. I like spending my money on that.
No, that's like I didn't want to get into this major rundown of your finances, but I assume
this gets
that's
me
where
from point A to point B still, and that's really all I'm looking for.
But
it's had a very good run.
Yeah, like
I feel like this has been like a past year issue for me.
Yeah.
For the most part, it's been okay.
The peace of mind seems like a major win at this point in your life.
The other part of it, though, it's like because as you mentioned, like I don't have kids that I have to worry about or anything. So like this is just me wearing it. Like I'm whatever. Like you know me. I just kind of wear it.
No, we were kind of having this conversation. We were having this conversation yesterday
like if
about
I'm freezing my ass off on the way to work. I'm just like, well, it's only me.
It's not only that. It's just you're just like. Whatever. You know, like it's just
like I view that. I
get that.
Like
I
if I'm
get
like
that.
shivering on my way to work because my Jeep has terrible you just can't keep the heat in. I'm like, well, like it's the money I'm saving. Like I mean, I get to go to spring training next month or something. So.
I think we're very in line with that type of thinking. It's just like, what's the point if I don't have to?
Yeah. Well, if it was impacting somebody else, then I would be much more concerned.
It just seems like you could probably get away with it.
But it is on the radar. We're gonna have no material for this show.
I know.
If I ever get a new car.
Wow. Did you buy that thing new?
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. I've never had a new car. So, like, that's another thing. Like, I've gotten so used to that. Like, little things don't bother me. Like, the lack of a side view mirror for 16 months is not a big deal. Like, it's, I'm just like, well, at least this car gets me back and forth. So,
another nice perk of it is, like, the
perspective is huge.
The back seat. Sometimes, like, I don't know, like, the way, like, it doesn't, like, attach all the way to, like, the floors. If I go over, like, a bump.
Jesus Christ,
dude. It really, like, it comes up a little bit. So, like, I can hear, and where I live, there's a main street that is very hilly. And so, like, I hear it all the time when I'm driving.
Oh, that's the worst. Like, there's a lot of speed bumps around here. Like, that's like when you start.
When I come down, I'm just waiting for, like cartoon character wheels go off to the side.
Like, 3 cars ago, I had shocks problems. And it's like, you go over the bump, and you just hear it, like, the entire car just goes, and it's just like, it annoys me. I have that's another thing. This is something we should probably get into at some point. Maybe we have. I've diagnosed myself with misophonia, I think is the name of it. Okay. It's basically, let me just look up the definition of it. It's got
a lot of self-diet. diagnostics recently.
It's because I just don't want to go to the doctor. It's a chronic condition that causes people to have an extreme reaction to certain sounds or triggers.
Yeah.
So like little sounds annoy me, and that one, like that thing of like the car going over the speed bump and not being fully like that would drive me nuts if I had the situation that you're dealing with. So it
is because you go up and you're like, what's gonna happen when I come down?
Oh, that's
are all the pieces gonna be intact?
Speaking of my misophonia,
aside from that,
do you know where my misophonia I think came from?
No.
Carl.
Yeah.
The laptop. So that's just like laptop pounding is something that drives me nuts.
Yeah.
That type of thing. So anyway, let's get into football. I'd rather just talk about your car for an hour, but I don't think
we could go in any number of directions with that.
But before we get into the playoffs, let's talk about a team that's not in the playoffs. The Patriots fired Gerard Mayo on Sunday night about an hour and a half after their season came to a merciful end on a winning note, which is a unique situation on its own. Let me just turn over the floor to you and get your thoughts as a resident quasi-Patriots fan.
Yeah, use that term loosely.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think it was a move that had to be done. I mean, we've talked about this for several weeks. That like there was just
it's still kind of wild that it happened.
I think I was surprised the manner in which it happened.
Sure,
like it was just rip the Band-Aid off right after the game, press conference,
which
next day
honestly might have been a pretty good
be done with it.
Good media relations move. Shout out Stacey James, I guess. Like otherwise, because especially the way that Sunday played out, losing the number one pick, people being mad that they finally won a game.
Yeah.
Like that would have just festered for, I mean, it's what, a 12 to 24 hour thing. It's not the end of the world, but yeah, kind of like changing the narrative right away, going from like, oh yeah, it does kind of suck that we just lost the number one pick, but we fired the coach and we might be bringing in a new guy that you like.
Yeah. I think once the connections started being drawn between them and Mike Vrabel, like that I think was when the writing was on the wall. Like, and I still feel that like it's just inevitable that that's going to be the hire, and I don't know if they make this move unless they feel like they have a strong chance of hiring.
That's what I was going to ask you. So, if I was a Patriots fan and I felt that way, that would piss me off. Like, you know what I mean? Like, what are you doing it for exactly then? Like, you only did this because Mike Vrabel interviewed with the Jets on whatever day it was, Thursday, Friday. Like, does that somehow further validates or solidifies your ideas that Gerard Mayo stinks as a head coach in the NFL? You were willing to give him another year because that? I don't know. That's the timing is part of it. I don't disagree. That would kind of be irksome to me if I was.
I mean, I would be more. I like the fact that there's conviction in who they want to hire. You know what I mean? Like I can't see a scenario where it's not Mike Vrabel. Like, I don't think you fire Gerard Mayo and then bring in like another rookie head coach.
What's interesting is BetOnline has odds on this, and Vrabel is the clear favorite, -400 right now. This was as of what's today? Wednesday morning.
Wednesday, yes.
Brian Flores is actually the second favorite, 4-1. Then Ben Johnson 6-1. Then Cliff Kingsbury 8-1, and then it gets into a whole bunch of other guys like. No, we don't really need to get too deep into Liam Combs 16-1. It does feel like there's a course correction coming, and it's almost like it'll be interesting to see like maybe Ben Johnson would have been the right choice in the long term, but because of how badly things have gone this year, you do kind of need to, even if Mike Vrabel is not as good as people think he is, just kind of getting it back to level ground for a few seasons before you can really take off. Maybe is imperative. The more I think about Vrabel, the less not impressed I am, but just I think it's probably getting a little bit overrated here, especially that he didn't have a lot of great success in Tennessee.
It just feels like they're like, we need to hire an adult.
But like, so this is the thing is you start reading these stories. There's a thing in the Athletic,
somebody with experience of building some sort of culture.
Sure. Chad Graff in the Athletic today reported that Mayo is playing cards on the plane coming back from Arizona instead of watching film. There's the Boston Sports Journal report yesterday saying, you know, from pretty much the jump, they're like, this guy he's just so far in over his head. Like, you're not going to deal with those problems if you hire Mike Vrabel. I mean, you're probably not going to deal with those problems if you hire anyone. But
the one thing that probably got undersold in all of the hoopla surrounding his hiring was the fact, like, his inability to build out a staff.
Yeah.
And I don't even mean just by, like, him being a jerk or anything,
No.
but just like not having the connections, which I think was also mentioned in that story.
I was just gonna write that.
Like,
Staggering when you see it listed out like that.
That there are so many first year coaches all just trying to figure it out at once, and you're relying on a head coach who made such a significant jump that like it just. The volume of connections just aren't there. Like that, you have to already go to the front office and be like, "Man, you gotta help me hire bodies."
Which, again, I think I almost wrote this for the site the other day. I just got caught up with other stuff. You can do a typical blame pie. Like the Crafts get a massive portion of that because like you just start. We kind of said this stuff in the moment, but you start just retrofitting it, and you're just like, "What were we?" Who thought this was a good idea?
Yeah.
It's not even a Mayo thing. It's like when it's a Mayo thing plus a Covington thing plus a Van Pelt thing plus an Elliott Wolf thing. Like you needed at least one person in there who's got a Rolodex and an established.
I think that's where they're
reputation.
At, right? It's like we need somebody who we have confidence that can just stabilize this thing for a couple of years.
And I think you turn it over to. I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. I said I think the Crafts have to come out and say, "Whoops, we screwed up. This is our fault," which, to his credit, Robert did. And you got to just basically turn the thing back over to the football guys. Yeah. And that's what I think Vrabel brings too.
Which I think is important. Like, you know, I understand some people wanting them to go with Ben Johnson or somebody with more of like that offensive ingenuity to be able to work with Drake May, but I just think they're at a point where like you kind of got to focus on the culture first and then hope you hire the next Ben Johnson as your offensive coordinator or whatever it may be. Because I think we've seen that with teams across the league, like the Chargers with Jim Harbaugh, or like even like Denver with Sean Payton, and what Pittsburgh has done for all these years with Mike Tomlin. It's like you get the guy who builds the culture, and then you find somebody who's able to work with the quarterback and the offense and get the rest of it.
And honestly, these hotshot offensive assistants have a meh track record of success for every Sean McVay.
It looks good when it's going right.
An Arthur Smith, right? Like it's so
there's flash to it.
Yeah, I think
it's risky.
I don't know if Vrabel's necessarily the best option they have or the highest ceiling, but I think he's the most necessary option that they can go to. So, you know, it's a sad state of affairs. Anyway, speaking of
real quick though, what do you think of like the idea? Because I think this was also mentioned. Of just like Mayo making such a concerted effort to be the anti-Bill Belichick, because like that was something that, again, like was pretty clear in the moment. Like I still look back at like him spilling the orange juice. Like I know that was like such a stupid thing, but I'm like why? Like, and he also like after the introductory press conference had I think like a side session to really just he was just trying to hammer home that like, hey, I'm not Bill Belichick.
Here's the thing too.
Went too far in that.
There's
direction.
a lot of dysfunction at the end of the Belichick thing, by the sounds of it. Also, good job by Chad. It was in the athletic story too, where he's basically tuned everyone out at the end. And I think we talked about this a couple weeks ago. It's like, how did like Belichick not rub off on Mayo a little bit more? And I think it's pretty clear now that he just wasn't even close to rubbing off on him. Like, you have to get close to something to be able to rub it. I mean, that's just rubbing 101, you know? So I think he probably was like, this thing was super dysfunctional, and I'm going to do everything I can to be the opposite of what it was at the end, as opposed to like the totality of the Belichick thing. So I think it's probably just overreacting to what happened at the end and just trying to course correct so much. He just, I also just think it's possible he had no clue what he was doing.
Maybe because like if that did happen and there were like sort of battle lines drawn, like you'd hope that he would maybe galvanize a small group that would then be able to take the baton and run with it. But instead, it seemed like it was just Kraft's guy got into the role and then was like, oh boy,
here
100%.
We go. This is another one where I like talking about the big picture of this thing, because I think it's applicable to stuff in everyday life. Like you see, which is it's kind of crazy. It doesn't happen more often because you see it in the real world and business and things like that more often than you do in professional sports. And like I think that's just an interesting. There are parallels to be drawn to like the guy 3 cubes over from you is like that's Gerard Mayo. It's just funny to see that applied in real world. So. All right, let's get into teams.
Oh, yeah, going to make picks, right?
Yeah. So before we do, I just want to do a quick recap of our preseason picks. You and I did an AFC and an NFC preview show. I just want to run through these just to congratulate ourselves or to put ourselves on the chopping block. We'll start with the AFC. You had as one of your picks the Chargers and Chiefs. Chiefs and Chargers finished 1-2. That happened, I think, if I'm not mistaken. You got that at plus 140. Joe Burrow, most regular season passing touchdowns, 11-1. I do believe that.
Yeah.
That hit.
Yep.
And then Will Anderson, defensive player of the year, 40-1. You did not hit on that.
That was looking all right for a little bit, though.
Yeah, it
Once
was. Yeah.
Aiden Hutchinson went down, it was kind of an open field. So, good opportunity to cash out there.
Yeah, exactly. That's all you can look for at this point. My AFC picks, I had the Ravens to win the AFC North at plus 145. Got that. Patriots, last remaining winning team. They won in week 1, which directionally correct, but they screwed that up. And Xavier Worthy to win Offensive Rookie of the Year 19-1 is not gonna get home.
He's getting better though. He's making an impact on that offense.
NFC, you had the Vikings under 5.5 wins.
That
might be the worst pick of all of them.
Yeah.
They went way over that. Bijan Robinson, 10-plus rushing touchdowns, plus 425. Did he get there?
He got there.
He did?
He got
okay.
home.
And then Dak Prescott, most passing yards, plus 950. That's tough. Injuries are in.
I still don't hate that pick.
I don't either. So
I do hate it because I lost money on it, but it was there.
The main event, my NFC picks. I had the NFC North is the most combined wins of any division. I didn't actually check this, but I feel pretty confident in this one, considering that the Packers, Lions, and Vikings combined for 38 wins, plus the Bears actually had a handful of wins too. Baker Mayfield over 11.5 interceptions. That got home. I think he was tied for the league lead in interceptions. And Rams went in the NFC West at plus 330. I should have just parlayed all of those, and I would have done pretty well. All right, so we're just going to run through this day by day, right? So we're going to start Saturday afternoon.
By day.
Day by day. Saturday afternoon, the Chargers at the Houston Texans. This thing is a 4:30 kick. I saw this tweet from Adam Spolane. This is the start time for every wild card game in Houston Texans history. 2021.
Familiarity is going to be huge.
I'm not even going to give you the years. Saturday, 3:30. Well, this is Central Time, so I'll change it to Eastern Time. Saturday 4:30, 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 Saturday 4:30. So this is what they do. This was there was no more layup than this game being the 4:30 game on Saturday. Chargers 2.5-point road favorites at Houston. The total I had and now I lost it like a big dummy is 42.5, which is funny because I think I'm actually on the total in this game. Yes. So that's where I'm leaning. What about you? What say you about this game?
You leaning over or under?
I'm leaning the under here. Home unders this year for Houston have been especially profitable. They're 7-1, 18-8 over the last 3 seasons. I think only Kansas City has been more profitable home unders, according to Action Network. By DVOA, Houston is pretty easily the worst team in the playoffs, largely because of its offense. That being said, they have a very good defense. Chargers also have a top 10 defense. And then you've got 2 mediocre to bad offenses. Chargers ranked 12th by DVOA. Houston 26th by DVOA. They were 25th in offensive efficiency in the second half of the season. Really struggled after Tank Dell went down in week 16. And they haven't scored more than 23 points since the weekend before Thanksgiving. So I don't think they're going to score a lot. I don't love the idea of laying the 2.5 on the road with the Chargers, even though it does kind of feel like the kind of game,
Yeah.
It's just take care of business game. This is a hallmark of a low ceiling, high floor team. You should be able to just get through this one and then probably get just squeezed out next week by a much better team. But I think, if I'm leaning anyway, I would lay the points with the Chargers. But if I'm gun to head and have to make a pick, I'm going under 42.5.
I think that's the thing about the Chargers, right? Is like you mentioned, they get low ceiling, high floor, and in games where it could come down to the wire, or I feel like they're a team that's prone for even an upset if they get past this week. If you beat yourself, they're a team that
100%.
Will be buttoned up. I feel like they got a formula that travels pretty well.
The ceiling floor thing feels like it's a cliche, but there's just this.
Yeah,
they have a level set that just is very consistent.
Exactly. Yeah, and we've seen how good the defense can be. I do think it was overrated to an extent earlier in the season due to the level of competition, but by and large, still pretty good unit. And as you mentioned, Houston's offense, we point to some of the injuries they've suffered in terms of weapons, but their offensive line's been bad. They don't run the ball. The quarterback play has been bad. How much blame you want to put on the weapons is whatever, but clearly CJ Stroud is not taking that next step this year. So Houston's a team that I'm looking like this is kind of turning into a lost year for them. And they might be a team I look at next year to sort of bounce back, if just kind of reset. But yeah, I think I'm with you on the under, and I think I would lay the points on the road, even with with the Chargers.
Yeah. I'm trying to find my stop.
The only thing with the Chargers is like they too, as you mentioned, have some offensive issues.
Yes.
Like, do they have enough playmakers?
Probably not. I did laugh at this though. ESPN wrote a story. It was like MythBusters for all the playoff teams, and so I just habitually went to the Packers one, and it's like, so I read it as, here are myths about these teams and why they're wrong and how these teams can be good.
Yeah.
But it wasn't necessarily that. So the myth for Houston was the injuries to Tank Dell and Stephon Diggs sank the Texans offense. And the why it's a myth is the Houston offense has plenty of other problems. Was the I was like, oh, that's cheeky. So yeah, the offensive line's a
They're
mess.
bad in other areas.
Yeah, they what is it? I think I looked it up. They just can't pass block either. The other thing too, Chargers run the ball a lot. Like, I don't know if we mentioned that. So
I mean, like, even when they had their full cast of characters, you're like, what's going on with this offense?
Oh, the other thing, like, that was the myth for the Chargers, that Justin Herbert's been a different quarterback under Jim Harbaugh, is like much better. It's like, actually his numbers are kind of like worse this year over year.
Yeah.
It's been sacked a ton despite the fact that they run a lot. So yeah, not a whole lot of, I think they're just like a prototypical playoff under team. So
yeah,
I've seen, it feels like we're in lockstep.
I think
there.
so.
All right, great.
Does this game do anything for you though?
Saturday doesn't do anything for me at all.
Yeah.
Like, no, because like the Houston thing is real
I think
too.
that,
Like,
I will say though,
tuning in on at 4:30 on Saturday, just seeing that godforsaken stadium.
think this, because of just, there's a little more unpredictability, if you want to call it that. I don't know. Like, this moves the needle more for me than the second game on Saturday.
I agree, although I will probably talk myself into the second game on Saturday just because of the intangible stuff.
Yeah.
Which I guess is a perfect segue into the Saturday night game. What is this, an 8 p.m. kick, 8:30? I'm not sure. Like, it's hard to find the actual times. But you got the Pittsburgh Steelers headed to Baltimore to take on the Ravens. As it stands right now, the Ravens are 9.5-point favorites at home against their division rivals. Total set at 43.5. Looking like light breeze 30s, nothing major weather-wise, which is something to kind of consider as always this time of year. So, like, I think I'm going to kind of tip my hand here, but, like, who do you think is the best team in the NFL?
Best team in the NFL? I'm still high on the Eagles.
So, like, the Eagles feel like a fair enough option. I think the Lions would probably get some love. Maybe there's some Chiefs holdouts. Like, Baltimore, pretty clearly by the advanced metrics, basically DVOA and EPA, is the number one team in the league, which kind of surprised me.
Yeah.
From
honestly,
like
I'm kind of
explosive offense.
kicking myself now. I still like Buffalo in the AFC, but there was a point a few weeks back where I was looking at Baltimore's Super Bowl futures, and they were sitting there like, I want to say it was 8-1.
Uh-huh.
And I'm just like, for the reasons you mentioned, like the advanced numbers on them, we know what the ceiling is. The defense was rounding into form. You're like, this is a team. This is a team that can beat anybody, clearly. And if I'm getting 8-1 on them, it's like,
They are still,
obviously I didn't pull the trigger because I'm a bonehead, but
they're plus 550. So, I mean, that's still,
yeah.
I might look at that and pair that with some sort of, I don't know, just juice it up with like Celtics to win the finals or something type of deal, just so I can really get something a little bit juicier. But yeah, so they're good. The Steelers, maybe we were right about the whole time.
Not good.
A little bit of a mirage there. So, like, I thought some interesting trends with this. Again, this is from Action Network. If Pittsburgh closes as a 9.5-point underdog or bigger, it would be the biggest spread they've faced as an underdog versus Baltimore ever, which is, I guess, not surprising, but also kind of surprising considering, like, you want to talk ceiling. Like, we've seen the Ravens be Super Bowl champions more often than the Steelers in their time. Or maybe not. The trends, though, all over the place. As a dog of 3 or more versus Baltimore, Pittsburgh is 6-1 against the spread with Tomlin. However, in Tomlin's career, counting the regular season, they're 3-14 straight up and 7-9-1 against the spread as a dog of 7 or more, which kind of...
So you got competing trends.
Yeah, and like you kind of look at it and you're like, Steelers getting points. Mike Tomlin underdog. Got to grab it.
Which I think is what they're baiting you into.
Yeah, and I think this is kind of the problem with trends, right? Is like the Steelers as 3.5-point underdogs with Ben Roethlisberger in his prime is a lot different than going to Baltimore on a Saturday night against Lamar Jackson and a historically good offense when you've got the ghost of Russell Wilson and a defense that is falling apart at the seams. So, you know, one trend is not always equal, or not one cover is not always equal to another. So, like, with it being 9.5, I'm almost more tempted to lay the points just because I think if this goes Baltimore's way, it's 31-10. And it's just we're going to bed early on a Saturday night, like, because there's no point staying up and watching the rest of this thing. I think that's where I'm leaning with this. Pittsburgh. What's the saving grace for Pittsburgh when you look at the Steelers? What do you think?
No, I mean,
like defense,
the defense, but I don't
trending
think the
in the wrong
defense
direction.
is that good.
So this is from ESPN. They are 17th in defensive efficiency and EPA since week 12.
They are way too reliant on splash plays, both offensively and defensively. Yep. And I just don't think that that's a sustainable formula going into the playoffs, especially against a team of Baltimore's caliber. I think Baltimore rolls in this game. And I actually bet this game on Sunday night and took the under. It was at 46.5. It's now down to 43.5. So that's a pretty significant line movement. And I think I'm still leaning the under, though, because I don't know if Pittsburgh does anything offensively in this game.
Yeah, I'm tempted to take the over because I think, like I said, like Baltimore's good for at least 30. Yeah, that's the thing. Like honestly. They could get yeah.
Like a 40-10 sort of deal.
The total's probably I think the total's probably a pass for me just because there's too much volatility with Pittsburgh's offense. And like, I guess if you simulate this game 1,000 times, there's a bunch, or not a bunch, but a small bunch that like Tomlin comes up with something and does the Tomlin thing, and they turn it into an AFC North punch you in the mouth thing. But I do think that's taking a lot of what we know from the past and applying it to right now, where, like I said, Baltimore is just such an explosive offensive team. Pittsburgh, the defense is falling apart, and they can't keep pace. So it's just, I don't know, 9.5.
It is, and then you throw in like the Lamar Jackson playoff struggles element in there.
Oh, I did, yeah.
So where that's another sort of just like narrative in the background to where like if you're kind of leaning Steelers,
sure,
you can just really talk yourself into it for all of the reasons that you're mentioning. And it's just like, I think when you just put these two football teams side by side, it's pretty clear.
Yeah, which you have. I think
who
you have
better team is.
The Lamar thing is peculiar. They are 2-4 in playoff games that he starts. Scored an average of 16 points per game. In the 4 losses, they're averaging 10.5 points per game. And I guess if you want to lean on history and kind of tie it into what we were talking about earlier with Vrabel, the 4 losses include a 28-12 home loss to Tennessee as a 10-point favorite in January of 2020, a game that the Titans led 28-6 late in the fourth quarter before a garbage time touchdown from the Ravens. So, like, this is kind of that exact scenario, but again, that's a one-time thing, it feels like. And I do think, like, the Lamar stuff, I don't know. Like, do you put any stock into that? Is this... I think this game is such a lopsided affair that it's not going to matter.
Yeah.
But it is something to kind of revisit maybe next week. Like,
well, I was trying to figure out which way to tackle this and when to tackle it. Well, first, I don't know if you have any strong MVP takes between Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen.
No, I think it's...
What I was really getting at was, like, who is this a bigger postseason for?
I think it's bigger for Lamar. Because
feels like it, right? Because at least with Josh Allen, we've seen it's really good performance at times in the playoffs.
This is probably unfair, but Lamar has 2 MVPs, right?
Yep.
So, like, you already have the hardware, you know.
Which I think Tony Romo said that a couple weeks ago on the broadcast. It's like voters are inevitably going to kind of skew towards the guy who doesn't have it.
Yeah, and I'm not even saying, like, the voting necessarily. I'm saying more like the narratives and things like that, where it's if Allen loses, you know, this weekend, it's like, well, this is the first time he's won the MVP. And I also look at the fact that he is playing with a less talented roster than Lamar is. I think that's a big reason too. Is like there's nothing really about Buffalo that's super impressive outside of Josh Allen doing Josh Allen things. Whereas I do think the totality of the operation in Baltimore is a little more impressive, or at least has a higher potential. So
yeah,
that's a weird way.
I guess with Baltimore, it doesn't feel that different from previous versions of the Ravens. Like, I don't look at this Ravens team and be like, they're much better than they were last year, or even last few years.
Yeah, I meant to look
maybe they
that
are,
up. Yeah,
from a number standpoint, but it doesn't feel that way. It would, at least with Buffalo, it just, I don't know. I feel a little different about them. Like, I just think their offensive ceiling at this point is higher than it's probably ever been, despite
which is wild.
The talent being different.
We'll get to that actually very shortly. Do you have any other takes on this game?
No, I'm all over Baltimore, and I think it's. Yeah, I don't think it's particularly close.
So you're not willing to take one of those Jeep payments? Well, I guess the thing's probably already paid off at this point.
Well, that's. I didn't even get into that. Not to circle back, but things paid off. So, like, I have to introduce a car payment into my life.
That's why I'm still driving a 2012 Honda
That's
Civic.
That's honestly the biggest factor. You
know?
So,
I'm with you. Them in the same boat.
Ride till the wheels come off. Unfortunately, I think I'm speaking literally in this case.
I was gonna say, like, I think like your Jeep is the Houston Texans. It's like the we were talking about the Chargers trying to figure out that barometer.
Yeah.
I think your Jeep is the anti-Charger, where it's just like,
and
it's like, it's great in the summer. Like, I can take the top down and like I can go to,
I'm operating as if I'm CJ Stroud.
Yeah.
I'm just blaming everything around me.
It's just like, there's always something, man. This just isn't working.
I'm just not elevating my game in that department.
Some days it's awesome. Some days it's going to look great, but a lot of days it's going to be kind of a dumpster fire. So 85-1, you're not looking for the Steelers at all.
No.
Is there any possible world in which the Steelers can win a Super Bowl? We meant to kind of do this with others, but no, there's no. There's not.
No, there's. I mean, the path is very clearly like the splash plays that we mentioned go in their favor, right? Like their defense reverts to the ball hawking unit that it was earlier in the season, forcing turnovers left and right. And you take advantage of some of these other teams in the AFC that aren't exactly all that great either.
Yeah, and Russell Wilson has to pretty much revert to like 2015 version
it's
of
not
himself,
happening.
right? Yeah, no, I don't think so. Russell Wilson's been around for a long time. Kind of forget that. We've also been around for a long time doing the spread here on the Nesson family of podcasts and vodcasts. You and I meet every Thursday on the Nesson channels, basically. If you want to listen to the podcast, you can do that at Spotify, Apple, wherever else you get your audio podcast. If you'd rather watch us, which is also a great option, you can go to Nesson's YouTube, Twitch, or Facebook pages and watch us there. Moving on to Sunday, we got a 1 o'clock kick, which again, it's kind of remarkable how a lot of these teams fall into the same window. It feels like we've gotten the Bills 1 o'clock Sunday kick a ton, dating back to.
I was just thinking about that about the Saturday slate. It's like we just did this on 2 holidays, 3 of these 4 teams.
Too, yeah.
Like that's why maybe I'm in on the Chargers because it's a breath of fresh air.
That's a fair point. I hadn't considered that. So we got the Broncos at the Bills on Sunday at 1 o'clock in Orchard Park. The Bills are 8.5-point favorites. The total set at 47.5. Weather not going to be much of an issue. 25 degrees, slight breeze, chance of snow showers. We're looking at 2 top 10 teams by DVOA. Denver 10th, Buffalo 5th. I don't know. It sounds like you have a stronger take on this, or at least on the Bills. So I will turn it over to you to start us off here. I'm guessing you're looking to lay the points.
Oh, 100%.
Okay,
I'll copy and paste my argument from Baltimore Pittsburgh onto this game. Like I think Buffalo rolls. Denver is I don't know what do they hang their hats on? Their defense is
we'll
good,
get to it,
but I think it's a little overrated. The offense, look, you still got the rookie quarterback. Too many 3-and-outs with them. They tend to. I think it's easy to flip field position on them a little bit. Defense gets worn down late in games. I don't know. I think this Buffalo offense right now, and I think to go back to what we were saying about like it's weird because the talent doesn't seem to match what it had been maybe last year or the year before. But I think the big thing is that they don't make mistakes like they used to either. So the evolution of Josh Allen in terms of taking care of the football is, I don't know if we talk enough about it, to be honest with you. Like that for all the
especially
the
considering
cool
where he
stuff
came
he does
from
and
too,
running people over and just making the crazy plays on the run or whatever. Just his ability to play the quarterback position is ultimately what separates this Buffalo team from previous iterations. So yeah, I'm laying the points. Another bet I made Sunday night.
This is a rare situation where the trends back up my initial thought. And I want to take the points with Denver, 8.5 points. I think in a 1 week, 1 game sample size, I'm taking Sean Payton to draw something up and stuff Sean McDermott in a locker. And it wouldn't be the first time somebody's put Sean McDermott in a locker in a 1 game sample size. I question his ability to coach in the playoffs when it's just, I know every week is a 1 game season, but it feels magnified in the playoffs. And again, I found some stuff that kind of backs this up, at least from the Sean Payton side.
It's always nice, huh?
Yeah, it is. It's just like, well, I guess I'm right.
I'm not crazy.
We're not revisiting this next week.
If not, you just click exit out and move on.
This is also from Action Network. I feel like I use them a lot. They do a great job with like their trends and things like that. And they put
package
them in
everything very well.
I was gonna say it's in a nice story. It's not like you just have to kind of click through stuff. So I feel like I'm leaning too much on them, but I just want to give them proper credit. Peyton 33-17 on Sean Payton 33-17-1 on the road since 2018, and he's 4-1 against the spread as an underdog in the playoffs. 3-9 versus the spread as a favorite. He covered as a 10-point favorite the only time he closes an underdog of 6 or more. He's also 3-0 against the spread on the road as an underdog in the wild card or divisional round. 3-0 is good. He would join Doug Peterson, Tom Coughlin, and Rex Ryan as coaches to go 4-0 and as a road dog in those 2 rounds. Which, when I saw those names, I'm like, nothing overly sexy about any of them, but I do think they're decent head coaches who get their teams up for 1 game when they aren't completely outclassed. And you could argue, which I think that's a fair argument, that they are in this situation.
I was going to say, so do you think that this Denver team is comparable to any of the previous Saints teams that he had coached?
No, but I think they're more comparable to some of the Jets teams that Rex Ryan had in this, or the Giants teams that Tom Coughlin had. And I think, too, one thing that's not getting talked about a ton, maybe, I don't know. That's such a blanket cliche. Maybe people are talking about this. The Buffalo defense, since week 9, 30th in success rate, 30th in pass defense EPA, 32nd in dropback success rate against. Is Bo Nix going to take advantage of that in his first playoff game in Buffalo? I don't know, but it tells me there's a chance to get a couple big plays there. And that's the difference between losing by 13 and 6 or 7. So I think there's the 8.5 points feels like a lot with that coaching matchup, with one real major red flag of the team laying 8.5 points. So I'm gritting my teeth and doing it. So I'll grab those 8.5 points. I would probably lean under then in that case too.
I will say, if we are robbed of Buffalo versus Baltimore in the divisional round because of...
So if they lose to Denver, our conversation gets revisited. It's like Josh Allen fell on his face. I don't think they lose, but I do think it's tight. Yeah, you're right.
But that will suck.
Yes.
Like, talking about Buffalo and Baltimore next week will be a lot more interesting than
it would be
whichever.
Well, it would be Denver and Kansas City, and then it could be like Chargers, Bills, and that's I don't know about
that's
that.
an ugly scenario.
Yeah,
it's like we at least if those 2 teams take care of business and we got Buffalo, Baltimore, at least we have that one.
Although, I guess there's no way around this, right? If Baltimore wins, they go to Buffalo. If they both win, is that the?
Yeah, right.
It just feels a little early for that, but I don't know. I guess there's no other way around that. Yeah. It's the problem when you have like an unimpressive Chiefs team win the 1 seed. You know, it's just like it's never going to work out perfectly where you're going to get the 2 best teams in the championship game probably. But that is what it is. Anyway, anything else on this game?
No.
The tables are going to be burning.
If Denver is to play sort of the game we did with Pittsburgh, what is the path for Denver to be a Super Bowl contender?
Denver 85-1.
Knock on the door.
85-1. They have to. Bo Nix has to be Joe Flacco in
That's a good
2012 or whatever year it was. Like get unconscious. I think he's shown enough to say that he can do that. I don't think you're banking on it. They would have to go on the road, right, the entire time. So, like, that's tough. But, like, okay, say that you pull the upset this week. They aren't afraid of the Chiefs necessarily. Like, it's a familiar thing.
Yeah.
And then let's see how it all shakes out in the championship game. In a one-game sample against Baltimore or the Chargers, I guess it would be. Like, you feel okay with that. It's not likely they're 85-1 to win the Super Bowl, but that's the path.
Yeah,
I think.
the other one is like a Nick Foles. So it had to
Sure,
go with
yeah,
Philly,
yeah.
Where it's the other side of the ball that's probably gonna get you there, but you need to do enough.
Yep.
And we've seen like the upsides there.
Yeah.
That's the one thing about Bo Nix. Like, I think he has more upside than I probably gave him credit for coming into the year. Like, you see him do
100%.
some things, and you're like, okay, he's a NFL quarterback.
Yep. We probably held it against him that he's older, too. Like, it's like he's not going to get a whole lot better. I was like, well, maybe he will. I don't know. And begrudging respect to Sean Payton, who I don't typically like, but he's doing a good job. All right, let's go to Sunday afternoon. Well, I guess it's both Sunday afternoon, but late Sunday afternoon. Philadelphia, I think this is the game of the weekend. Well, maybe not. The Packers head to Philadelphia to take on the Eagles. Philly currently a 4.5-point favorite. I think they opened at 3.5. It's been bet up to 4.5. Totals at 45.5. Weather, not a huge deal. Two cold weather teams could be mid-30s, slight breeze, nothing major. By DVOA, this is again for the entire year, so this is a major what's the word I'm looking for? Not criteria, a major whatever. Yeah. Number 4 versus number 2. By EPA, number 5 versus number 4. I will think of the word eventually. So two really good teams, at least on paper, at least by the metrics across the entire season. That being said, I think the Eagles might beat the piss out of the Packers.
Really, I was gonna cede the floor to you because I feel like you probably have a stronger take on this game than I do.
I don't put a ton of stock into the fact that the Packers didn't beat a good team all year because I think they played them all pretty close. I think you got probably easily the worst first round matchup you could have gotten. I think it's the worst matchup they could have gotten in the entire tournament because they just know Minnesota and Detroit so well. I don't think they're afraid of those teams, and I think they would have beaten the piss out of the Rams or the Bucs.
Does it feel like with the Packers, it's like you survive this week and look out?
100%.
Like they might be a Super Bowl team.
You're going to be an underdog in every single game you play after that still. So, like, it's not likely necessarily.
Get it out of the way early, this challenge.
I just think there's too much that's happened since whenever to make me think that that's going to happen. I just think they're so outclassed in this game by a very, very talented Eagles team. For me, the big thing was last week, the Christian Watson injury, torn ACL, done for the year. He's not the best receiver in the NFL. He's not Justin Jefferson. He's not Jamar Chase. Doesn't put up big numbers. There are games where he doesn't really do anything at all on paper, but I think he gives that offense an element that they need. I think the other receivers are too possession heavy, and the problem with them being possession heavy is none of them have great hands either. That's a whole nother story. So, like, I think when you take him out of their offense, they just struggle to kind of generate different looks. The numbers seem to back that up. They were 2-3 down the stretch without him last year. I think they were 1-1 this year, 4-4 overall, 23. They're a 500 team without him. When he's gotten hurt in games, they've gone 2-3 this season, and that includes a 34-0 win over just a brutal Saints team. So, like, you can see it when he goes down. They just don't have the same opportunities, the same looks. And Philly has one of the best defenses in the NFL. They have especially a good run defense. So the Packers want to run the ball with Josh Jacobs, and I just think it's easier to game plan against them when you don't have the threat of Watson over the top. And so now it just becomes, I think the playbook shrinks for the Packers. LaFleur kind of gets in his own head sometimes. I think you're going to need a balls-out Jordan Love performance, and I just think the deck is stacked against him here. Like, it has to be the Cowboys game last year on steroids because I just think this Eagles team is better than that Cowboys team. The flip side, I think the Packers defense, the numbers are good, but you see stuff sometimes like last week against Chicago, 3rd and forever, just keep them out of field goal range. They play prevent defense 13 yards down the field. The Bears pick it up. They kick the field goal. The game's over. The game doesn't really mean much, but I think it's just kind of indicative of what they are. Like, matchup-wise, like they can technically take away Saquon Barkley. They've been pretty good against the run this year, but I just look at that Eagles team, assuming Jalen Hurts plays, assuming A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith are relatively healthy. Like, there's just too many chess pieces to have to account for that I just think this is a bad matchup on both sides of the ball. And then you do the math in your head, and it's like, I don't know. I just don't see. I think they're going to have a hard time scoring points, and they're probably going to have a hard time stopping the Eagles. The Eagles do tend to start slow. The Packers do too. And Jalen Hurts
sounds half under.
Yeah, right. I'm playing the first half under. Jalen Hurts sounds like he's going to play, but he hasn't played since December 22nd with the concussion. So, like, maybe you get him a little rusty and you stay in the game, but I start adding it up. It's like, I don't know.
So what I like about the Eagles is that there's a lot to like about them, but it's oftentimes when you get into the playoffs and you start to figure out like each team's path to the Super Bowl, it's like, do you choose the team that is good at a lot of different things and can beat you a lot of different ways, or do you pick the team that has this one carrying trait that they can just rely on to get there?
Yep.
I feel like the Eagles have both of those things.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like they're good across the board, but they're not just good across the board. They're elite across the board, or at least have a roster that is constructed in a manner in which they can be elite across the board. So, like, and they have elements that historically have played well in the playoffs. You know, they are physical. They do win in the trenches on both sides of the ball. I was just going to say,
they're very good both sides of the ball in the trenches.
Honestly, the biggest question about them is probably the quarterback, 100%. Right? Like, you're going to have the running element of it, but, like, can he, if they fall behind 14-0 in the first quarter, get things back on track? Or can you orchestrate a comeback in the fourth quarter, they're down 10?
Yep.
You know, like, those are the things that is really the only concern, I guess, and maybe the coaching. I think there's still a knack there. You mentioned LaFleur. I think Nick Sirianni has a little bit of that in him, too, to where he might just, talk himself in circles. But aside from that, it is a lot to like about Philly.
Yep. They're really good in the trenches. They've been, I think they have like top 10 across the board. Packers can't generate a pass rush without blitzing, so that's a problem too. So, yeah, I think I would lean.
Packers are interesting because, like, it feels like earlier in the year when Jordan Love was going through his problem of turning the ball over too much, they were also forcing a lot of turnovers. And now it's like they've gotten to a point where he's not turning the ball over, but they're also not forcing a lot of turnovers. So it's like this weird little identity development, I guess.
Yeah, it's tough. Sunday night, Commanders go into Tampa Bay, take on the Bucs. The Bucs are 3-point favorites at home on Sunday Night Football. Total's 50.5. Might get a little bit of rain. This is a tough one. I don't have a major feeling here on this game at all, but do you?
Is it like a sneaky fun game?
Yeah.
Like I'm kind of looking forward to it.
I'm leaning the over here, 50.5, just because I want to have a good time.
I think a team gets to 30.
Yeah.
In which case the over comes into play. So that's my lean. This is another game I bet Sunday night because it was at 3.5, so now it's down to 3. I think I'm still leaning Washington though. Like, both teams have defensive problems, but with Tampa Bay, like, is the Baker Mayfield roller coaster to deal with.
Yeah.
I like both offenses. I don't know. I think I'm just grabbing the points and hoping for the best in the shootout.
Yeah, I'm leaning the over at 50.5. I'm actually going to lay the points with the Bucs. I think they have a very good run game. Bucky Irving's been great. They have a top 10 run game by EPA. Nobody left in the field is worse against the run than Washington. They're giving up 137.5 yards per game. That was like the ESPN thing. It was like the myth was like they can't stop the run, so they're going to lose. And it basically was just like, well, they've won all year, so it's not a huge deal. It's like, well, okay, at some point I think it's going to catch up to them. Tampa Bay offensive line is fantastic, as evidenced by 5.2 yards per carry, tied for second. No quarterback kept cleaner than Baker Mayfield this year by percentage of dropbacks. He's got a 110.9 passer rating when kept clean. I think the defense, which has been an issue for Washington for most of the season, does do them in here, and the volatility with Baker is a major issue.
Yeah.
That does scare me. But I think if I had to make a pick here, I'm leaning with Tampa and the over. So
yeah, it's weird. It's like these two teams throughout the entirety of the season have been way higher on Tampa than Washington. Probably Washington at any point, even when they were undefeated for that long stretch. Almost to the point though where I feel like nobody's kind of talked about them. To go back to the cliche of like maybe people are talking about them, but I just I talked to the wrong people.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I don't know. Like I feel like with them, they have the quarterback component that could be the real X factor in a matchup between two kind of second-tier NFC teams.
Sure.
I'll tell you what, a lot more interesting than it would have been if it was Washington and Atlanta.
Yes, that's fair. You're talking about people. We are talking about football and sports every Thursday on the Spread, Nesson's Football and Sports Betting Picks podcast. You can get that wherever else you get your podcast. You can listen to it on Apple, Spotify, all those fun outlets, or you can watch the video version of the Spread on the YouTube, Facebook, or Twitch page of Nesson. Did I do one too many of those? I don't know. The schedule's all over the place.
People are talking about people.
We've got a couple minutes, so I guess we'll kind of rush through this last game, which is unfortunate because I like this might be the best game on paper too. At least the smallest spread. The Vikings are 1.5 point road favorites at Los Angeles on Monday night. Total 47.5. I will cede the floor to you for this to start this one.
The one thing that jumped out to me is the total. I think I'm leaning under in this game.
Interesting. These two teams played earlier in the year. The final score, I think, was 30-20. So
okay, a good, interesting context.
The Rams won that game. This is a face mask game.
Like we've talked about a few teams here that their identity has shifted a little bit over the course of the year. I think we're seeing that with the Rams. Defense has gotten much better down the stretch, which I think is. I don't think it's fluky. I think you have a young defense that can come into its own late in the season. Like I think there was going to be some early hiccups. So they're evolving sort of into their fullest form, I guess. And offensively, they feel to me like a team that is not maybe as explosive as they once were. They can get you at the right moment though. It's like just keep us into the game, keep us in the game until that fourth quarter drive. And then we sort of just unload to the guys who've been there before and who we've won a Super Bowl with. So I lean under out of all the possible scenarios, but from a side standpoint, I might lean towards taking the Rams as well.
Give me the Rams.
Yeah.
I like the Rams here. It's unfortunate for Minnesota. That's just the way that the kind of cookie crumbled.
And doesn't it almost feel like they kind of just like they peaked, they went into that Detroit game, they got blown out, and it's just like
they got
that could linger.
They finally got.
Yeah.
And I don't want to react too much to what I saw on Sunday night. I just think it's a tough spot. And I love Ken O'Connell, so maybe he gets them going. It's a great, the institution's fantastic in Minnesota, but I just start looking at the matchup. They love to blitz. Nobody blitzes more than they do. Stafford's been awesome against the blitz. 103 passer rating, 14 points higher than when he's not blitzed. If they can keep him clean, which again, McVay's going to be scheming it up, making sure that the pocket is clean as can be. He's got a 60-point passer rating difference when he's clean versus when he's hurried. That's a team that I don't think anybody wants to face.
Well, because
it's just there's too much.
You hit on a good component there of Kevin O'Connell getting them, in a right frame of mind for a game like this, which I think is much easier if they're facing a team like, one of these other teams that doesn't have Sean McVay on the opposite sideline. Because I think that Sean McVay is going to have his team ready to go too.
This is again, as I get older, love coaching more and more. This is one that I'm excited for this. This is fun. Rams 30-1 Super Bowl might be something I look at, and they'll get blown out on Monday night now. Anything else, Ricky?
No, we gotta go.
And enjoy the football this weekend. We'll be back again next week with our divisional round picks for the best week of the year, as they say. So thanks for joining us. That's Ricky. I'm Mike. We'll catch you again next week. Goodbye.